The secret world of Freemasons hides many mysteries. There are bizarre rituals, mystic symbols, and strange costume dramas that climax in make-believe murder.
Then die.
But beneath these seemingly silly robes and behind these phony beards, there is a more ominous riddle: the enigma of Masonic power. Freemasonry has been woven into the fabric of power and politics since the 18th century. It has influenced revolutions from Boston to Paris to Istanbul and permeated the highest echelons of science, business, and the arts.
Most of the time, when people try to describe what Freemasonry is, they have a hard time doing it. And so what they end up doing is falling back on telling you people who have been members. And then you say, well, you know, Ben Franklin was a Mason, or George Washington was a Mason.
In most countries, the people who are in power, mostly they are Freemasons. For some reason, that's how it happened. It happened in the United States, in England, and all over the world.
Although it's supposed to be an organization devoted to brotherhood and equality, it nevertheless is something that has very socially stratified.
In the United States, 14 of our presidents have been Freemasons. If it's good enough for George Washington, then it's good enough for me.
We're about to explore how Freemasonry has shaped our world and created a parallel world of its own. To find out, we will enter the Masonic Temple to reveal the sometimes chilling links between the world's most prominent and secretive fraternity and the most powerful men in the world. January 1989, in Washington, D.C., George Herbert Walker Bush swears the oath of office and becomes President of the United States. Millions are watching, but there is one thing that they do not see. The Bible that Bush holds is filled with mysterious signs and symbols, known only to the members of a secretive society. It is the same Bible that George Washington used for his oath 200 years earlier. The Bible's pages are encoded with Masonic hieroglyphics, the secret alphabet of the world's oldest and most powerful social and spiritual order, an order whose roster of the rich and powerful has included Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Sir Winston Churchill, and England's King Edward VIII. Today, the Venerable Brotherhood includes women and men, blacks and whites, ministers, Muslims, and rabbis. It has a membership as rich and varied as actor Michael Richards, better known as Cosmo Kramer on Seinfeld, country music megastar Brad Paisley, and the Reverend Al Sharpton. Scroll back in time and the history of the order is a panorama of pride and progress. While Mozart was writing his Masonic opera, The Magic Flute, a French Mason named Guillotine was inventing a killing machine to chop off royal heads. While the Wright brothers were taking flight, Masons named Chrysler, Olds, and Ford were inventing the automobile industry. Colt and Gatling were modernizing war's most terrible weapons. And Freemasons were taking control of the movies, thanks to Louis Mayer at MGM, Jack Warner at Warner Brothers, and Daryl Zanuck at 20th Century Fox. There were entertainment and sports superstars, from Clark Gable and John Wayne to Harry Houdini and Mel Blanc, the voice of Porky Pig, Abbott but not Costello, men whose last names became household words, Ty Cobb and Arnold Palmer, Buzz Aldrin and Dave Thomas. In Washington, the seat of political power, 8 years after his own father swears the presidential oath on George Washington's Bible, the Freemasons refuse to let his son, George W., use the same irreplaceable book, because it is raining. But a presidential inauguration is just one of the many events with the cryptic undertones of a secretive order that is older than the presidency and older than the American Republic itself. It is the most powerful city in the most powerful country on earth, home to its most powerful leaders. This is the American headquarters of Scottish Rite Freemasonry, a branch of the order that traces its origins back hundreds of years. Outside, Masonic temples are often monumental, but we are going inside, into a hidden realm of images and icons, marble and myth.
I am Akram Elias, a Freemason, currently the Senior Grand Warden of the Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of Washington, D.C. We're entering the space that is most important in Freemasonry, the lodge room. What happens in a lodge room? Why do people have certain ideas about Freemasonry? What do Freemasons do in a lodge room? Is it a secret society? Are they plotting to take over the world? What takes place here? Central to the furniture of a lodge is the altar. This altar, on it you will find in an operating lodge the volume of the sacred law. What does that mean? It is basically a reference to whatever holy books that the members of the lodge believe in. In my mother lodge, for example, you will find the Holy Bible, the Tanakh, which is the Hebrew writings. You will find the Holy Quran for Muslims. You will find the books for those who believe in Buddha, etc. So whatever religion is or religions are represented. It is at the altar that the initiate takes his obligation as a Freemason. You notice there are three, what we call three lesser lights here around the altar. When the candidate is being initiated, it is dark. And when he sees the light, those three lesser lights help him see what is here. The volume of the sacred law and the universal symbol of Freemasonry, the square and the compasses. Very important to Freemasonry. The compasses are the instrument that help a Mason learn that he is at the center of the creation. That's the point, the first point of the circle. And you use the compasses to draw a circle around you. And the idea being that you need to circumscribe your desires. When dealing with others, don't go into extremes. Extremism is bad. Be moderate. And you need to figure out who you are to know how large, how big the set of compasses are. The square is a symbol of wisdom. And why wisdom? Because it brings together the concept of equality, equal sides, and rectitude, 90-degree angles. Using wisdom, you can know how large the set of compasses should be in dealing with others. That's the universal symbol of Freemasonry. Of course, central to that, in many places, you will find the letter G. And the letter G representing the great geometer, the grand architect of the universe. That is, that supreme being, supreme intelligence, whoever, whatever that is, reflecting the beliefs, again, the diverse beliefs of the Brotherhood.
Freemasons come to their magnificent temples as worshippers of many gods. But inside these walls, they commit themselves to a common constitution, make a solemn show of biblical stage plays, and the passing on of secrets. Secrets that 14 American presidents and hundreds of senators, congressmen, and judges have sworn to protect. They may pledge allegiance to liberty and justice, but America's leaders have always been deeply entwined with secret rituals and ancient kings. It has been that way since the very beginning. It is December 1773. In a private room in a Boston tavern, a group of wealthy businessmen and powerful lawyers hold a secret meeting. Among them are Paul Revere and John Hancock. They are Freemasons. This inn is their Masonic lodge. But tonight's agenda is not ritual, but revolution. Tonight's entry in the journal reads, "Lodge adjourned on account of few brothers present. Consignees of tea took the brethren's time." For years, these upper-class colonists have been acting out Masonry's strange costume dramas, dressing up as King Solomon and the builders of ancient Jerusalem. Now, fed up with England's oppressive taxes, they become patriots in pantomime. The men of the Green Dragon Tavern disguise themselves as Mohawks, sneak aboard a British merchant ship, and dump a cargo of tea into the harbour. This illegal act of sabotage becomes known as the Boston Tea Party, and the Masons who plan and perform it become the leaders of an increasingly violent rebellion.
The Boston Tea Party is one of the most famous Masonic events. There's just something romantic about it. Citizens are burned up about unfair taxes. What are they going to do about it? Well, they're going to take the tea and throw it in the harbor, and of course it's not the citizens, it's a wild tribe of Mohawks that happen to all be having dinner in the Green Dragon Tavern that came out and threw the tea overboard. Now, it's also widely held to be a Masonic event, and there's a tremendous amount of circumstantial evidence that points to that.
2.5 years later, John Hancock and his brother Masons formally declare America's separation from Great Britain. In Philadelphia on the 4th of July 1776, at least 9 and perhaps as many as 50 Freemasons sign their names and stake their lives on the Declaration of Independence. Without the Masons, there might never have been an independent America.
Yeah, I think you could safely say that modern society would have been very different in its culture, in its aesthetics, in its outlook, if we hadn't have had Freemasonry developing in the way it did in the 18th century.
But with the Masons, the new nation's government is entrusted to, or seized by, members of this occult and exclusive order. In America, Masons grasp the reins of the new government and hold that power for the next 2 centuries, enfolding their nation and its capital in the secret geometry of the Masonic craft. Long before there were modern Freemasons acting out bizarre rituals in blindfolds and aprons and what appear to be Santa Claus suits, there were real Masons, the skilled stonecutters and architects who dreamed and designed the great pyramids of Egypt, the sacred temples of the Holy Land, the mystic Mayan complexes of the Americas, and the soaring cathedrals of medieval Europe. These were operative Masons, the superstars of ancient construction sites, endowed with a knowledge of geometry and gravity that seemed to have been bestowed directly from God. In the 18th century, a revolution in science, technology, and free thought was underway. Known as the Enlightenment, this new movement saw operative Masons as possessors of powerful ancient knowledge. Upper-class English and Scottish gentlemen styled themselves as speculative Masons and set about rebuilding society, not with stone, but with radical ideas like the equality of all men. Nowhere is the legacy of the 18th century Freemasonry more evident than in the grid and granite of Washington, D.C. The capital of the modern world's most powerful country hides many fascinating secrets. Secrets that ordinary Americans were never meant to understand.
They're without doubt the oldest and the largest fraternal organization in the United States and in Europe. You're taking disparate fragments and threads of evidence, and you're weaving this into a tapestry of a conspiracy.
Allegedly, a grid of streets just north of the White House traces out a pentagram, a symbol used in Masonry and witchcraft. Not surprisingly, the Masons themselves deny this.
Now, there are many people that believe that there are secret signs and symbols laid out in the streets of Washington. I've looked at the maps and I don't see them. I can see an incompleted star. There are some conspiracists that believe that the Freemasons made some kind of satanic symbol just north of the White House with a pentagram. But the pentagram's not even complete. Rhode Island Avenue doesn't go all the way to Connecticut. If we're so darn powerful, how come we couldn't make a complete star?
Masonic symbolism is deeply etched into the bricks and marble of this alabaster city. The stonemason's compass and square, the letter G, which may stand for God, the great architect, even the very tradition of laying a ceremonial cornerstone. All of this can be linked back to George Washington's proud Masonic ties, and those of the men with whom he plotted, fought, and triumphed. Masonry is also symbolically omnipresent on the world's most powerful currency. In the 1770s, America's founding fathers appointed a committee to design an emblem for the infant nation. Benjamin Franklin, the only Freemason on the panel, suggested a pelican feeding her young, but the seabird idea was shot down. Franklin was outvoted in favor of an eagle with 13 arrows in his grasp, representing the 13 states. And even though the all-seeing eye and the pyramid were proposed by non-Masons, they are symbols used in Masonry, and the idea persists that the Great Seal of the United States is a cryptic token of Masonic power. In fact, the all-seeing eye and the Great Architect has been part of religious and secular imagery for centuries. Conspiracy lovers also assert that the Latin Novus Ordo Seclorum translates into a new world order, hinting at a Masonic cult of world domination, allegedly including everyone, from both President Bush to Lucifer himself. But there is no hard evidence to support this theory. The rather deflating truth is that the words were added to the Great Seal in 1770, and they mean a new order of the ages, referring to the modern world's first democracy and the overthrow of kings. And then there is this little parlor trick. M-A-S-O-N. For those who see the sinister side, this is even more proof of ominous Masonic manipulation. But again, the truth is a little less sensational. In fact, it took 150 years after the Great Seal was designed for it to first appear on the dollar bill. In 1935, a Masonic president and vice president decided to give the seal its most public use.
During President Roosevelt's reign, Henry Wallace was his vice president. They decided to put the Great Seal of the United States on the back, the obverse and the reverse. Now, I have heard the story that Henry Wallace, Roosevelt's vice president, thought that the Great Seal was a Masonic emblem, because the all-seeing eye of God is a common Masonic icon. And because Henry Wallace thought it was a Masonic emblem, he suggested to Roosevelt, who both of them were Freemasons, that it would be nice to put this on the back of the dollar bill.
For Roosevelt, and for all the Masons, the society and its symbols represent virtue, morality, and self-control, noble qualities for individuals and for the nation. But some skeptics believe that power and ambition, not righteousness, lie at the core of the Masonic creed. What is undeniable is that Freemasons have been leaders of revolutions, liberated millions from oppression on many continents. In South America, Freemason Simon Bolivar led a revolution that liberated 6 countries from Spanish rule. In Italy, Freemason Giuseppe Garibaldi unified disparate provinces and territory into a nation. In Turkey, Freemason Kemal Ataturk put an end to the Ottoman Empire, inaugurating a new regime of religious tolerance and secularism inspired by the Masonic Constitution, a dramatic leap in a Muslim land that still endures today. But there are darker chapters in Masonic history as well, including the story of a man who dared to reveal the secret rituals, then suddenly disappeared. In 1826, exactly 50 years after some of Freemasonry's most prominent brothers signed the Declaration of Independence, the order finds itself consumed by a brutal murder and condemned by millions of Americans. William Morgan of Western New York is a novice Mason. He has been boasting that he is about to publish a book revealing the Brotherhood's deepest secrets. He is also a notorious petty troublemaker, locked in a jail for stealing another man's shirt and tie, and for not paying a debt of $2.68. The story goes that 3 strangers come to town, pay his bail, and cart William Morgan away.
We don't know what happened after that. His body was never found. But as the event snowballed, it was, wait a minute, this is a group within a group, a government within a government, men operating behind the scenes, murdering whom they will. What are they doing? And so from this unauthorized event by local Masons in Batavia, New York, a wave of anti-Masonry swept the country.
It has never been proven that Morgan's abductors were Masons and that he was murdered. But hysteria over the fraternity's presumed involvement in Morgan's disappearance builds. New York's 227 Masonic lodges dwindled to only 41. There is a growing suspicion of the Masons' secret rituals and the powerful politicians who take part in them. For some Americans, adulation of heroes such as Washington, Franklin, and Hancock is swept away by a tide of resentment that there are too many Masons in too many high places, right up to the White House. An anti-Masonic political party is founded. William Wirt, its charismatic leader, is in fact a Freemason. The reasons why he went against the Brotherhood may never be known.
William Wirt was one of the longest-serving Attorney Generals of the United States, a very prominent man in his day, a brilliant writer and politician. He was selected to be the Attorney General of the United States in 1817 and served through to 1829. And he transformed the Attorney General's office into a powerful crime-fighting organization and legal arm of the United States government.
Wirt, campaigning as an anti-Mason, gains 8% of the popular vote, enough to take a third party into the race and to give him a run at the presidency. He finishes a distant third to Andrew Jackson and another Freemason, Henry Clay. Wirt dies in 1834, and the anti-Masonic frenzy soon evaporates. But the story doesn't end there. A century and a half later, someone breaks into his coffin and steals Wirt's head, a final indignity for America's leading anti-Masonic Mason. But there is a happy ending. In 2004, a skull in a box is found in a Maryland antique shop. It is the head of the headless anti-Mason, William Wirt. Confirmed by DNA analysis and bits of soil and roots, it has been returned to the tomb, hopefully forever.
Right, it strikes me that they weren't just regular grave robbers. They went into this particular tomb of a very, very prominent American and stole the skull of William Wirt. I think they knew what they were heading for.
Membership in American Masonry reached its peak in the years following the Second World War, but has been declining ever since. while in Britain and Western Europe the movement flourished. But the eerie rituals and baffling ceremonies at the core of Freemasonry have always presented an easy target for dictators and demagogues, popes and prelates. Masonry's enemies have included Adolf Hitler, television evangelist Pat Robertson, and Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, later to be elected Pope Benedict XVI. In the United States, Freemasonry no longer excites enough public resentment or approval to sponsor an anti- or pro-Masonic political movement. The last Mason to be elected president was Harry S. Truman in 1948. The last Mason to run for the nation's highest office was Bob Dole. Freemasons no longer hold the reins of power in Washington, except in the minds of the most outrageous conspiracy theorists. But they do maintain supremacy in another, parallel world. The leaders who gave birth to the American Republic, world-shaking revolutions, have left a legacy that extends far beyond the borders of colour, gender, and faith. This is Boston, birthplace of a branch of Masonry that seeks to refute the tired old allegation that the order is only for tired old white men. We are entering a room that echoes with the history of American oppression and liberation. Prince Hall Lodge, named for a Revolutionary War soldier from Massachusetts, the founder of what remains a separate, self-segregated offshoot of the Masonic family tree. A brotherhood that has nurtured generations of Black American leaders. Prince Hall Masonry counts among its members such community and national leaders as the Reverends Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, powerful Congressman Charles Rangel, and even basketball star Scottie Pippen. 230 years ago, in an age when most African Americans in the North and the South still were slaves, Prince Hall and 13 other free men of color were installed as Masons by a white military officer. Their initiation was ratified in 1784 with a charter from the Grand Lodge of Great Britain, the colonial power Prince Hall had just fought against. Leslie A. Lewis is Grand Master of Boston's founding Prince Hall Lodge, No. 1.
On July 3rd, 1776, Prince Hall started the first Black lodge called African Lodge No. 1. Now, because they were a lodge under dispensation, they were not allowed to enlist or bring in new members. All they could do was march on St. John's Day and bury their dead. But as time went on, Prince Hall petitioned the Grand Lodge of England for a charter to act as a regular lodge, to bring in more members, and the charter was granted. And from that point on, it goes on and on up to this date. There are over 49 Grand Lodges in the Western Hemisphere and almost 400,000 Prince Hall Masons. So Prince Hall Masonry has thrived from that date.
The end of slavery allowed Prince Hall Masonry to spread southward, a faithful facsimile of the ancient brotherhood with the same codes and costumes, yet never fully accepted as its equal.
Knowing the history of Prince Hall as we do, Prince Hall was a man that never gave up. And I think that if Prince Hall could look at Prince Hall Masons today, he'd be pleased with what he saw, what he sees.
Today, for better or worse, Prince Hall lodges across America remain nearly 100% black. While many lodges in the southern states have no non-white members at all, it's a controversial dilemma for a brotherhood that claims to take good men and make them better. The legacy of Prince Hall and his black brother Masons is staring down an uncertain future. This is Richmond, Virginia. 500 Prince Hall Masons are gathering tonight to elect a new state Grand Master. At 48, Curtis Vaughan is the youngest Grand Master of the state. In his opinion, Prince Hall Masonry was essential to black society in the racially charged South.
My name is Curtis S. Vaughan, Jr., and I am a Prince Hall Freemason. During the late 50s, late 40s, and 30s, there was nothing for a person of color to do except to go to church during their leisure hours and to affiliate with the order known as Prince Hall Freemasonry.
I found out that I had an uncle that was a Mason from Providence, Rhode Island. He was also a past Grand Master. And he shared with me all of the thoughts about what he did when he was younger, how he couldn't do this or do that, but Masonry was his door, the door that opened for him.
I constantly saw my father with his ritual, with these strange individuals coming to our home and staying for about 2 or 2.5 hours, and I could never go up where they were, and I could never hear what they were talking about, but I know that they all had little black books, and occasionally they would dress up, put on a black suit and a white apron, and go somewhere. When I became of age, I filled out a petition, gave it to my father, he submitted it, and I was approved for initiation into the Prince Hall Masonic Lodge in Virginia.
Half a century ago, Prince Hall Freemasonry provided a safe refuge for traveling black performers in an age of often violent discrimination. Count Basie, Duke Ellington, Lionel Hampton, Sugar Ray Robinson.
Basically, if an individual of color were traveling from a foreign destination to a new destination, he could always feel assured that if he ran across a brother Mason, that he would be taken care of, that he would have clothing if he needed it, he would have food, and that he would be put on the right path to continue his travels, much in the way that the Underground Railroad functioned right prior to the Civil War.
But that age has passed, and with it much of the mandate of separate black Freemasonry. Today in Richmond, a ritual known as the Ceremony of Sorrow honors 50 brothers who have died in the past year.
You're going to see what we call a Lodge of Sorrow, which is a memorial service that we do to show our affection and griefs and pay tribute to our departed brethren who have gone before us.
With the average age of an American Mason now more than 60 years old, more may soon follow.
This is not intended to be a burial ceremony, rather a memorial service, at which time we give expressions of our grief and affections, pay tribute to the service and Masonic services of our departed brethren, as exemplified in their lives.
There is something waiting, because I have done the best I could. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith in this life. If you want to receive your crown, keep fighting in the name of Jesus. Keep on running the race. Finish the course in the name of Jesus. And most importantly, keep the faith.
It seems befitting that we pause here and drop a memento in honor of our fallen comrades, demonstrating to the outside world that Masonic charity ends not at the grave. Having consigned their bodies to Mother Earth, having commended their spirits to God that gave, we still cherish their memories in our hearts and will strive to emulate their virtues.
To never part.
We may confidently hope for a blissful resurrection.
Ironically, each passing of a Prince Hall elder lifts the veil of secrecy and opens the door to a younger man. Generations of black American men have found value in this racially divided fraternity. Segregation is still a fact in some branches of Freemasonry, both black and white. Last fall, Alabama Governor Bob Riley, the highest-ranking Freemason in public office in the United States, was on the defensive, trying to explain his membership in an all-white Masonic lodge. Yet the governor was hardly alone. In Alabama, there are 32,000 men enrolled in 318 Masonic lodges, and not a single one of them is black. But all Masons, black and white, confront another dilemma, a shrinking membership that threatens the survival of the Brotherhood. Freemasonry has endured unchanged for nearly 3 centuries, but the membership is shrinking fast. If the Masonic movement is to survive, younger men must be inspired to follow in their grandfathers' footsteps.
Today, there are so many other organizations, and Masonry has to find something different to do to bring in the younger brothers, to bring in the younger men. I don't know where I would have been today if I didn't join Masonry when I was 29 years old.
To cultivate a new generation of Masons, Prince Hall Lodges sponsor a youth wing called the Knights of Pythagoras. Sydney is a graduate of the program.
One of the values of the KOP, and there are many values, but one of the main values I've always saw was community service. The men coming to help the boys, teaching us how to give back to our community. We're 12, 15 years old, and we're giving back to the adults. And that's big. That puts you on a high pedestal.
Within each Master Mason is a story of a personal transformation, forged from self-knowledge and secret signs. Divided by race and shrouded by secrecy, the Masonic cosmos is complex, ever-changing, and not easy for outsiders to understand. As John Hamill of the Grand Lodge of England explains, there is no one to blame for this but the Masons themselves.
We went through a period starting just before the Second World War where we almost took ourselves out of society. We didn't inform the public. We cut ourselves off from the media. We didn't, any journalist coming to ask a question, we tell her we don't talk to the press. And we allowed a mythology to go up about Freemasonry being a sort of vast, secretive web. That was something that had obviously to be dealt with. We had to get ourselves back into the community in the proper way. We had to get proper information out, and that process is still going on now.
Masons may not rule the modern world except in far-fetched fantasies of global conspiracies, but they do rule a world of their own, a parallel universe with its own laws, leaders, and history. The secrets of the Freemasons are steeped in tradition and anchored in time. 33 levels of eerie initiation ceremonies, skulls and coffins, blindfolds and chains. And beyond the magnificent marble chambers of America's great cities and the humble halls of smaller towns, beyond the solemn gatherings of aging black men and their junior knights, there are many other Masonic-style clubs, subsidiaries and spin-offs, each with its own rites and rituals, each confident of its own place in the lives of men and other people. For more than 300 years, Freemasons have attained positions of leadership, power, and celebrity in dozens of countries. From Colonel Sanders to Houdini, from Mark Twain to Richard Pryor, these Masons had one thing in common: they were all men. Freemasonry's relationship to women seems based on the idea that brotherhood would lose its meaning if there were sisters in the lodge.
I think one of the possible challenges that there may be in the future is the relationship of women to Freemasonry in the male-only organizations. Most of all of the regular Grand Lodges around the world, membership is purely male, not for any reasons of not liking women or thinking women are in any way second class. It's just historically we always have been.
That hasn't stopped women from demanding the right to enter the secretive world of Freemasonry, to have access to the knowledge, mysteries, and perhaps even the important political and social connections that men do. June Lennon of Atlanta, Georgia, is part of an offshoot called Co-Freemasonry, where men and women are equally welcome and equally unrecognised by the all-male lodges of the United Grand Lodge of England.
My personal belief is there is a difference in the sexes. We think differently. We have different political, educational, job experiences. And if we start to discuss a particular topic, it's very important to hear a man's point of view. It's important for that man to hear the woman's point of view. It allows for an intellectual equality that you wouldn't necessarily get over the dining room table.
But Co-Freemasonry is just one branch of a diverse assortment of secretive sororities. Susan Gonzalez is a member of the Worshipful Lodge Universalis in New York City, an organization in which men are not welcome.
Women have been a part of the ancient mystic rites for thousands and thousands of years, and Masonry sort of borrowed those symbols along the way, along with their operative symbols.
Janet Wintermute of Washington, D.C. belongs to an even more exclusive and secretive all-female club.
If you go into a Masonic lodge where there are men in the room who don't want you there just because you're a woman, your chances for actually working Masonry in an appropriate way are zero, less than zero. It can't be done. The women who have become Masons are not interested in that. They're not worrying about recognition issues, about being equal to men. They don't regard Masonry as having much to do with gender at all, actually. They're looking for the light. They're looking for enlightenment and understanding of the universe and the thing that made everything happen in the universe. And this doesn't have anything to do with being a man or a woman.
Women Masons may not yearn for the acceptance by the Grand Lodges and worshipful masters of the all-male Masonic world, but they are attracted and enlightened by the same symbols, the same path to self-awareness, and the same secrecy.
Our order is extremely discreet. Our rituals have never been accurately published anywhere. You can purchase a book called Duncan's Ritual in any Barnes & Noble and read the mainstream Masonic rituals for the first 3 degrees, the craft lodge degrees. You can't do that with my order. We are extremely discreet about that matter.
I took an oath as a Mason to not divulge any of the information about who's there and what they're doing. Not because we want secrets, but because they need the opportunity to be there and feel free to be candid and open. And that's their right. And who am I to expose that, to make them feel uncomfortable about their journey? It's an oath that I took.
Feminine Freemasons face unique challenges because people don't know we exist, or in denial that we exist when they hear about us, and can sometimes find it a bit ridiculous that women, feminine, is in a fraternity. That is a particular challenge.
With a separate structure for women and another for African Americans, the self-imagined world of the Freemasons may seem antique, unjust, and obsolete. Yet its estimated 6 million brothers and sisters encompass nearly all races and nations. Something about this secretive society still resonates 300 years after its rules were first written down. Masonry may seem mysterious and clandestine, but the fact is, we see Freemasons around us all the time. The famous fun-loving Shriners, leaders in charity projects around the world, are the public face of Freemasonry. Formerly the ancient Arabic order nobles of the mystic shrine, made up entirely of Masons who have attained the 32nd degree. Here, it's a rather tame meeting of these charitable comrades. Each in a mock Turkish fez, relics of an age when Westerners viewed the Middle East as a land of flying carpets and exotic Arabian Nights. These goofy guys that play for a serious cause, raising an estimated $649 million in the last year for hospitals where burnt and suffering children can be healed at no charge to their families. For more than 300 years, Freemasonry has been a crucible for leaders. It has attracted men, and now women, into a society devoted to self-knowledge and, as the Masons claim, to making good men better. The familiar Shriners and their charity work and the youth programs of Prince Hall Masonry are one side of Masonic leadership. The involvement of Masons in some of history's greatest revolutions is another. What we may never know is just how Masonry may be influencing today's political leaders and the leaders of tomorrow, whether Masonry may be instilling the virtues of morality and self-control, or whether loyalty to the Brotherhood may drive political agendas. Even in the 21st century, much of Masonry remains hidden behind a curtain of controversy. And there is no hard proof that Freemasons control the world. But as long as the world's biggest secretive society keeps its secrets, conspiracy theories are bound to continue.